This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have the lovely, the beautiful, the gorgeous Amber Smith on the phone with me today. How do you do, Amber?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing this interview as I drive into Los Angeles, California, which is kind of like driving into Vietnam right now. But I'm glad to be on.
What's it like in Los Angeles right now? Beautiful weather?
It's beautiful. It's kind of hot right now. It's gorgeous. It's very politically charged. Very strange place to be right now. It's not a good place for conservatives.
No.
But it's an interesting time right now, yeah. But the weather is amazing.
I bet you it's not as stunning as you are, though.
Oh, thank you.
You're most welcome. You know, it's funny because I know that out of all the you posed and were on the cover of a lot of magazine, and one of them, of course, was Playboy, and we just lost Hugh Hefner yesterday.
I know.
And
my goodness, that's crazy.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people that have posed for Playboy and have worked with him, and they've all said great things about him. What was your experience like with him?
You know, gosh, I only met him one time, but he was just, a gentleman. And, it was an honor to be on the cover of Playboy. It's just such an institution. And it was at a time, before extreme feminism where you would get attacked for something like that. So it was fun. And I was young and I was into that type of thing. And, now I'm back in school to be an alternative physician.
Mm-hmm.
My head's not like in that same place, but certainly it was a lot of fun. And it was fun being a sex symbol while it lasted.
Well, you posed for Vogue, Elle, Cosmopolitan, and Marie Claire. Like, do you have a favorite of those?
I think my type. I'm not a high fashion model, and I'm not really even a Playboy model. I think I'm kind of like the Cosmo girl.
Okay.
I have to say Cosmopolitan. I think I'm kind of in the middle. Playboy didn't exactly fit me, and neither did Vogue.
Okay.
That was just, couldn't quite get thin enough for Vogue, but I have to say Cosmopolitan.
Well, I was wondering, before we get to your films, if you just give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. My dad was a football player. He was with the San Diego Chargers. My mother was a teacher, and she was also a model, and she worked at Barbizon schools. So I kind of got brought up, in the modeling world. And then I went overseas and started modeling. It was definitely not an overnight success for me. It took about 6 years of struggle to even land my first cover. And then, finally got on a roll. I did well through my 20s, and then my early 30s, my career started to kind of fade out a bit, and I got more into acting. And then did that probably another 8 years, and then got sick, got some kind of like mystery illness that ended up being my silicone implants, actually, and had to take them out because I got so ill from them, but I didn't understand what was going on at the time. And by the way, a lot of women are going through that right now and having to take them out. They're getting so ill. But and now I'm in medical school to become an alternative physician, a homeopath. So my life's taken kind of went from super glamorous, flying around on the Concorde to, being in school every day. And I just took the case of a cat that has gastritis. So
okay.
It's not as glamorous as it used to be, but I love it.
Well, good luck with that. I wish you the best. I'm glad to see that you're venturing. What made you want to venture into that?
You mean homeopathy?
Yeah.
Well, getting so ill and not being able to find answers in the conventional medical world. I got tired of being given pharmaceuticals that only made me sicker, and then started to look for natural cures. And then finally I ran into energy medicine that I did not believe in. I thought it was a bunch of garbage, and I was wrong. So I went to school for it, and then, it ended up being my implants, because I feel much better now that they're out. So if anyone's listening and thinks they have Lyme disease like I did, or some kind of mystery illness or autoimmune disease, please ask yourself if you have, even saline implants are wrapped in a silicone shell. They're very dangerous, and they'll topple your immune system.
Okay.
Just putting it out there.
Well, you know what? 20 years ago, you did 2 films that are celebrating the 20th anniversary, and one of them, I've got the DVD signed by Joe Medjuck when he was here in Fredericton 15 years ago for the Silverway Film Festival, and that was a movie called Private Parts. I love this movie, but here's the thing. You play a character named Julie, and I actually went through the movie last night, and I couldn't find the character, but somebody had discovered you're the one that was on the phone when he was having sex through the speakers, right? Was that you?
No, I'm the girl who describes the summer camp scene.
Okay.
Do you remember that? Did I get cut out of I know I made the film, but maybe since they've put it back out, I got cut out or something.
I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's on Blu-ray yet. Here's the thing, I was trying to go through and figure out what character you were, and somebody was looking up and connected you with the girl that straddled the speaker. But I went last night and I watched that scene on the DVD, but there was no mention the name Julie, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm missing something because it was a while since I watched the film. So you're the summer camp girl.
That's not me.
Okay.
I was the girl that came in.
Okay.
And I recanted, I think, my first time with a woman, and I was a young summer camper, and Howard was right there. And then it goes into like this fantasy, and Janine, she was a very famous porn star back then. She was in the fantasy. And it's in there.
Actually, I remember that. I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. That flew over my head.
They wanted me to look very young and like innocent, so they took all my makeup off, and so I don't really look like myself. I just like have hardly any makeup on or anything.
Well, Babba-Booey still looks the same. He's still got those big beaver teeth.
I love Babba-Booey. I love Howard Stern.
I think Howard Stern's a genius. Even outside radio, he does terrific photography. He Oh yeah, he's part of it. His wife Beth, who, trivia for you, is actually 1 week younger than I am. Okay. Yeah, she is part of the North Shore Animal League, which is an animal shelter that helps find homes for animals, but it's a facility where the animals have a lot more freedom, where they're not all locked up like in kennels. And Howard Stern did a calendar on his wife Beth, and where she had her picture taken on each month with various animals from the North Shore Animal League. And I gotta tell you, Howard's a hell of a photographer, and how he uses color, and of course Beth is gorgeous. So so
oh wow, I have to look into that.
Yeah,
I tell you, that was a relationship that lasted when he met Beth.
I love Beth. Yeah, I found it because I looked her up. I was born July 8th, 1972. She was born July 15th, 1972, and she looks a lot better than I do at my age.
Well, I'm you guys' age, too. We're all about the same age.
You look better than I do, too.
Oh, stop.
You do, yeah. But, I loved Private Parts, and I went and saw that in the theater when it came out 20 years ago, and I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm waiting for it to come out on Blu-ray. It hasn't come out on Blu-ray yet, has it?
Wow, I don't know. How weird. Why would it take so long?
I don't know. But I listened to Howard Stern a lot, and I just out of curiosity, do you have a favorite whack packer?
A lot of them died. Do you remember the guy? He was a little person. He was very angry. I think he was a bit of an alcoholic. I think he died.
Oh, Eric.
Remember what was his name?
They called him Eric the Midget, and then they called him Eric the Actor. Was that him?
I liked him a lot.
Hey, yeah, he had just kind of a little bit of an anger issue.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. I don't know. There's something about him. I liked him a lot. You know, I was just thinking about that scene when it made me think about the scene with Janine and I in that movie was a very big scene. And when they premiered the movie before it hit the theaters, but they screened it, it was such a good scene that they had to cut it down because it took away from the movie. Because the scene between Janine and I actually became a love scene. And they cut all that out. So they should really find that piece of footage and put it in the Blu-ray.
Yep.
Because it was so well received that it just took away, the attention from the rest of the film. But we were really excited to have this huge, chunk of acting material come out on us, and then it, kind of got cut down. But if Blu-ray was smart, they would do that.
Well, you know what? When I switched to Blu-ray, I sold all my DVDs, but I kept Private Parts because it was Joe Medjuk signed it. He was the producer of the movie, and so I signed it, but I don't have it mixed in with my Blu-ray, so it's been a while since I watched it. So that's why I'm a little rusty on that. So I'm glad you corrected me on that. But yes, I remember the scene now. So yeah, my apologies, but I love the movie and I am waiting for it on Blu-ray and definitely want to celebrate the 20th anniversary of that. Howard Stern was going on about why was Titanic the winner of Best Picture when Private Parts should have won.
No.
And quite frankly, I was not a big fan of Titanic.
Yeah, it was a little slow moving.
Yep. I think the winner of that Best Picture Oscar should have been another certain movie we're about to talk about in a minute. Called L.A. Confidential. But,
yeah. Fun.
Oh, yeah. I know who you were in that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I know who you were in that. But going back to Private Parts, though, what was it like working with Howard Stern?
Well, it was awesome. I mean, he was Howard. He's, the same way he is on air, he is in person. And I just remember Janine, our scene, the girl and I, we were going to have our love scene, and Howard was off that day, right? He wasn't even supposed to be on set. And the next thing you know, there he is behind the camera. And I'm like, what's Howard doing here? He just conveniently popped up that I had a love scene with another woman, but which I thought was pretty typical. But I love Howard. I have nothing bad to say about Howard. So he was easy to work with. He was a good actor. And Robin is Robin still working with him?
Oh yeah, Robin's a real trooper. Robin's still with them. Fred Norris is still with them, and of course Babba-Booey.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know if Robin was still there. Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
I adore Howard Stern.
Yeah, Howard, Robin, and Fred, and Bubba, they're a great package, and even some of the supporting players like Ronnie Munn, the limo driver, is another one of my favorites. I don't think he was in the movie at all, but what a crazy guy! Have you heard his sex tips?
Right. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Would you go out with Ronnie?
I don't know about that.
And then JD, who doesn't know how to talk.
You get so attached to these characters.
Well, and then there's Sal and Richard. Oh my goodness, like there's just no shame. I love Howard Stern, and I'm glad he stayed on. But I thought he did a tremendous job. It's not easy to play yourself, and Howard Stern did a tremendous job in that movie.
I know. He was natural.
Yes. And of course, Betty Thomas, the director of the film, came off the Brady Bunch movie, went from Brady Bunch to Howard Stern, and I think Private Part's the best thing she's ever done. What was she like as a director?
Oh, very easy. I mean, that was one of the easiest movies I think I ever did. We actually had to reshoot that scene because they put a lot of makeup on me and they made me look very glam the first time. Mm-hmm. And we had to completely reshoot it without makeup because they wanted me to look more innocent, more natural.
Okay.
So I flew into New York twice to reshoot it, but it just was an easy production, and Betty was funny, and she really got Howard. And Howard was just really easygoing both times. So that was probably one of my easiest films I think I ever did.
Yeah. I'd like to see him do a follow-up film to Private Parts, because since Private Parts, some of these, like, Ronnie's become a much more bigger personality on the show since Private Parts, and Sal and Richard coming into the fold with their phony phone calls, and JD and
Right.
and some of the whack packers like Jeff the Drunk, and I like John the Stutter,
Right.
him and his rock star hair.
It's like the stories that Howard has now,
Yeah. No, that was just a great movie, and I'm looking forward to when they finally put that on Blu-ray. And of course I mentioned, L.A. Confidential, I think that should have won the Best Picture Oscar.
It was beautiful. It was very stylized. That was a hard call. That was rough. It was beautiful. It's a lot of people's favorite movie. L.A. Confidential was really, really profound.
And you played Susan Leffers, who, of course, they unfortunately put that bandage on your gorgeous face, on your nose.
Oh, I was so mad. I said, do I have to wear a bandage on my nose? And they're like, well, that's kind of the whole point. she has plastic surgery. I'm like, oh, darn it. I actually didn't know that they were going to do that when I auditioned for the role. I had no idea, but they're right. That's the whole point.
Yeah, and of course, the whole point is, excuse me, David Strathairn plays this guy who has these women. He has them arranged to look like movie stars, and of course, you're the Rita Hayworth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think of that process?
Right. Oh my gosh, when I was in modeling, I made the whole beginning of my career was based off of Rita Hayworth. I had very bright red hair. Now I'm blonde, but it was all based off of Rita Hayworth. Back then, like the 90s, they were really into like mimicking Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell and Rita Hayworth. They had, I don't know, that like kind of the 50s had a big revival back then. So yes, that whole Rita Hayworth thing was huge in my career. And then that film that was a lot of fun to work on, but it was a lot more serious to work on. You could just feel the vibe. There were a lot of real heavyweight players.
Yep.
You could it just was a very serious tone on the film.
Now, of course, there's a situation, of course, that your character gets uncovered. Now, between this and Private Parts, there's some nudity. Do you ever feel nervous about doing a nude scene, or does that bother you, or is it just come with the job?
Well, sometimes roles would come along that had nudity, so you kind of had to think, is it worth that? It's not that I loved it so much, it's just that, you wanted the role.
Well, I know, for example, in L.A. Confidential, there's a situation where they have to show a birthmark on you, and of course, I don't want to give away the scene because it spoils something, but again,
Yeah, there was nudity in that part, but that was fine because it was part of us, part of the movie, and it was you needed that in there. You needed to see that part. I was in a morgue. And Russell Crowe was there that day, and I was supposed to be, of course, completely still, completely dead, acting dead. And he was showing me pictures of, because we were in a police station. That's where we were filming that. And he would come up between scenes and show me pictures and make me laugh.
Okay.
It was different, pictures of, crime scenes, but, funny pictures. I guess one guy, I don't know, I guess he killed himself, but his penis was hanging out of his pants. And so I just never forget him running up and showing me this crime scene picture. And I could not stop laughing. And Russell said, "Too bad for you, he's dead, huh?" And I just started laughing. He was a joker, I tell you. So the movie was a lot of fun, but there was still this kind of overall tone of really seriousness about the film, because you see the film, it's very dark, very stylized, and you could feel that on set. You didn't want to make a mistake because there was too many heavyweight players, for you to mess around and forget a line or something.
Yeah. Russell Crowe, you worked with him in there, and of course David Strathairn, who I think is a very underrated actor. What was he like to work with?
I can't remember any direct personal stories, actually. But, I certainly didn't have any problems on set. Everyone was, unbelievably amazing actors. That's for sure.
Curtis Hanson, good director?
Yeah, love him.
Yeah.
Love him. He was very easygoing. A lot of fun with him. He's amazing.
Yeah. No, L.A. Confidential, I think. It took, I think Kim Basinger took Best Supporting Actress for the movie. And I think it took one of the screenplays, if I remember correctly. And I think it probably should have taken a lot more than that. They made it look beautiful in terms of it being set in the 1950s, 1953, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, you had Kevin Spacey, you had Guy Pearce, you had Danny DeVito. You had just a tremendous cast in that movie. It was fantastic.
I know. It was gorgeous, and they stylized it. And then, there was this one scene where we had to do I think it was a Night Owl Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't thought about it in so long, where there was blood everywhere because there was this huge massacre. Are you there?
Yep.
Greg? Oh,
yep.
sorry.
Yep.
Like you cut off. There was this huge massacre, and I had a panic attack because they had to pour blood over us, like fake blood,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't do the scene, and I just felt terrible because I could not do the scene because I couldn't lay in that pack of people. I don't know why. I've never had a panic attack. I never thought I was squeamish, and just all the blood and all the people, like pretending like they had been massacred. I couldn't handle it, but I finally got it together because everyone is, you relying on you, and there's kind of like this heavy pressure, because it's such a big film. And gosh, that was just a hard night to get through. Had no idea that I would be so affected by, it's fake blood.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Night Owl, was that a set or a location?
What do you mean?
Like, was it a set or was it an actual location?
Both. Well, we were in a diner.
Okay.
And it was a set inside it, and they set it up.
Oh, okay. Because
they set it up inside.
Yeah, because it had a great look to it, before it got massacred. It had a wonderful 50s look to it. So they did a great job at, because I've seen movies where they're supposed to be set at a specific time, but you don't get the sense that they're really capturing that. Like Boogie Nights came out the same year, and it really captured the 70s really well. But sometimes I find movies, they'll say they're set at a certain time, but you don't get the feeling that you're really seeing that the filmmakers captured it. I think Curtis Hanson captured that really well in L.A. Confidential.
You're right, and Boogie Nights was good, too. You really felt that.
Yeah, Boogie Nights, I think, should have been up for more Academy Awards as well that year. They're giving all that to Titanic. I'm like, really? Yeah. Yeah, I hate to cry a foul on Titanic, but I'm sorry, I was not one of the people that was ripping open Kleenex boxes over that movie. But
right, I know, I wasn't like I know.
Yeah, but
My card's beeping.
L.A. Confidential, of course, starred Kevin Spacey in it, and of course, you got to work with him much more closely in American Beauty. Now, this movie went on to win Best Picture, and I went and saw American Beauty in theaters 4 times when that...
Really?
Yeah, I loved American Beauty. I went to that 4 times. I just loved the look of the film, and of course, your scene, of course, very, very briefly. I wish you had more scenes, but you got that scene, of course, where you're standing up there with Peter Gallagher, who, of course, is the real estate king, and you're his less than impressed wife, and you just don't want to be there. And, of course, Kevin Spacey shows up there as Lester Burnham with, of course, Annette Bening as Carol. And I love that when Kevin says, I'll be exactly as you want me, or something like that. And he kisses her, and it's just awkward. And he says, I'm going to go get something to drink.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that film, too. I love the darkness of that film. Ooh, I really like that film.
Yes. That was the only scene that you're in, but yet, there's dialogue about the fact that you may have a decision involving the real estate king of sorts. He's not quite as together as he presents himself, but
right.
But Sam Mendes, really good director. What was he like to work with?
I love Sam too. I mean, I really didn't have many. I'm trying to think. I really didn't have many bad experiences with people. Sam was a lot more deep and intense. Mm-hmm. I'd say Curtis wasn't quite as intense, and Betty wasn't intense at all. She was very light. But I mean, Sam's good too. He's just more kind of focused and deep and darker, in my opinion. But yeah, I know I had a good run. I always had like smaller roles in really, really good films like that. I always was pretty lucky like that. But yeah, American Beauty was one of my favorites, just as a film, just going in there. And I just like those dark, haunting films. They're just, they really get me.
And of course, that image of Mina Severi when she's doing the little dance, and finally there it just goes silent, and you're zeroed in on just Kevin Spacey, and then she's all dark, and when she opens up her front, and all the rose petals come out, and that was just a stunning visual. Yep.
Boy, it worked, huh?
Oh yeah, that movie was just beautiful to look at, And very disturbing, but I like the fact that it didn't go over the line with it, Yep. Because I know there was a part there towards the end where Kevin Spacey had to make a decision, and I'm glad he made the right one.
Right.
Yep. But
yeah, I like films like that. That's kind of like my favorite type of film, that kind of dark, deeply psychological film like that.
Yeah, and I was really glad that Kevin Spacey took the Oscar, and it was honored for so many. I forget how many Academy Awards it won, but won quite a few, and I was quite gung-ho behind it. I did not like the Cider House Rules, and it was up against that, and I would have taken Cider House Rules out and replaced it with Election with Reese Witherspoon or Magnolia or something like that, but
right.
But I'm glad American Beauty took the Oscar, and yes, beautiful looking film, and I wish you had to have more scenes in it because you were quite stunning standing there.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, the next film I'm going to talk about, we got to go back to 1996, because right now we got like a 10-theater complex up there that opened at the end of 1996. Before that, we had just a 4-theaters plaza. And I remember one of the last movies I saw there. I took my mom to it. It was called The Mirror Has Two Faces with Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're in that.
I forgot about that film. That was one of the first films I ever did.
You get to work with Babs.
That's true. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Did I just have one scene in that?
It's been a long time since I've seen that. I saw it in your. Yeah. But
I think I did.
I took my mom to it, though. It was the last movie at that theater I took my mom to. And, Barbara Streisand, Jeff Bridges. I mean, how could I not want to see it,
I know. Yeah, I remember that. I played, gosh, all this, I haven't thought about this stuff in so long. Now I'm so in the world of medical. But it's fun thinking back to this stuff, It was such a fun, kind of glamorous time and very artistic and creative. But yes, that was one of the first films I ever did. I was still a model. I was living in New York. Mm-hmm. And there weren't a lot of girls at that time modeling that could act or wanted to act. It was kind of a time where models and sports players weren't really actors yet. I mean, nowadays they go in and out of acting all the time. There's no, like, the lines are blurred. But back then, it was kind of like the mid-'90s. It was kind of frowned upon if models wanted to act. So it was kind of hard to make the transition. But I remember I was still modeling, and they were looking for a model that could say some lines, and I tried out for it. I think it was either the first film or one of the first films that I ever did. I was still living in New York. I had not decided to pack it all up and move to LA yet, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to be directed by Barbra Streisand, and I played a phone sex operator, and it was great to gnash my teeth on that role.
What was it like meeting Barbra Streisand? Like, she's just this larger than life personality, What was that like? Were you nervous?
I was a little bit nervous, actually, because I actually didn't know much about her or her film. I mean, I knew who she was.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a big, like, Barbra Streisand fan, but it doesn't really matter because you still get nervous because, I don't know, just like her vibe, her aura, and the people around you are kind of nervous around her,
Yeah.
So there was this kind of respect. And I remember I kind of put myself, we were talking, she was telling me about the scene, and I put myself down, and she's like, "Why did you say that?" I was just joking, but I said something, I kind of put myself down. And I said, "Oh, I'm just kidding." And she's like, "Don't do that. Don't put yourself down like that." I'll never forget that.
Wow.
So yeah, no, it was a pleasure meeting her.
Yeah, I took my mom. I forgot to. I got backtrack back on American Beauty. Kevin Spacey, Annette Bening, and Peter Gallagher. You were in the scene with all three of them, and I know that this is probably a generic question, but any recollection what it was like on set with them?
That was really interesting because I watched them do the scene again and again and again. It was like one of the first times I ever got to see, like, master class actors do a scene about 20 times, and how fresh they keep it, how they're able to do it not the same each time, but like to just hit that level each time. It was I remember one time looking into the camera, and they had to stop the scene. Oh my gosh, I could have died. I accidentally just looked right into the camera, just by accident. And they stopped it. I'm going, I cannot believe I just shut down an entire scene with these huge actors. I felt terrible. But they were amazing. They just did it again and again and again with just as much, strength and pizzazz. And that was it was interesting. That's hard to do that many times and to keep it fresh because you don't know what take they're going to use. And what if they use take 17 that you're not quite as on? So that's not easy to do.
No. And of course, another film I got to bring up. You're listed on Wikipedia as The Gorgeous Redhead, and I only saw this movie in theaters, but I remember it was Tomcats.
Yes. Tomcats, I think, was that with Jerry O'Connell?
Yeah.
That was, well, that was my redheaded phase. That was like in the beginning of my film career. I was just all red-haired. I just played like someone, like, what would you call that person? Like, tries to make someone gamble more. They're kind of a temptress. I don't know if there's a word for it, where you try to lure men into gambling more. But I played that type, where I was trying to get, a certain character to bet even more money at the tables.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was a lot of fun, too.
The only scene, I only saw that in theater, and the only scene I remember is Jerry O'Connell getting into a situation with some woman dressed as a librarian, and it turned out very, very different than what he had planned.
No, that wasn't me. I was definitely in full glam at a casino table. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was in full glam, all right, once she started lashing his ass. Yeah, and, going way back, of course, you said Mare Has Two Faces with one of your first films, but you also did a film called Lowball.
Oh, my gosh. No, that might have been my first film.
Yeah, that's listed as your first credit. Yeah, that's listed as your
What?
first. That's listed as your first credit on Internet Movie Database. But
That
you
might have been. That was not a big theater film, but I
no.
remember auditioning for like a little independent film. Oh my God! Now that was a different experience. That I can't say was necessarily a fun experience. That was very crazy. It was a movie about like corrupt cops and drugs, and a lot of people on set were messed up. Like, and it was an environment where I didn't know what was going to happen. There were a little too many method actors, if you know what I mean. Like a little too many people taking it a little too seriously. It was scary, and I thought, is this what acting's all about? Like, you have to like become the character and become like, oh man, it was kind of scary. But it was also, I don't know, it was also very gritty and real, and I'd been in the world of modeling for so long that there was something very attractive to this very like hardcore, like we were like doing guerrilla street filming. Like we would just film in the middle of the street without permits and run. But again, the actors were so messed up that, woo, that was a rough film to do. But we made it through somehow. And I learned a lot on that set because I knew not what I do. Like I knew nothing going in. And that was education in guerrilla filmmaking, you know, in a month.
Yeah, that was, I think, 1996. You did a few films that year. I mean, you did a film with Cher called Faithful for director Paul Mazzarri.
I did a lot in New York. That was all New York. That was all me getting antsy in modeling and wanting to do other things. That was a big, big film. I had auditioned for Casino, the Sharon Stone role in Casino with Robert De Niro. And I didn't get it. Obviously, Sharon Stone did, but I mean, to come so close that I auditioned with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro 2 times, you know, was amazing, especially for someone that had never acted before. But Robert De Niro, it was producing Faithful.
Okay.
So he recommended me to Paul Mazzarri.
Oh, that was nice of him.
You have to see this girl. I know, what a nice referral. I didn't get this major film role, and he was right. I would have been so wet behind the ears. I probably would have freaked out if I'd gotten that role. But still, he recommended me for a smaller part in Faithful, which was actually a pretty good-sized part, with Paul Mazzarri and another amazing, you know, director, and Ryan O'Neal and Cher. And I mean, what a, you know, great introduction into the world of filmmaking.
Yeah, you got to work with Streisand and you get to work with Cher, two of the big stars of music. And you mentioned Ryan O'Neal, of course. I was born in 1972, and of course, one of the great movies that came out that year was What's Up, Doc, which featured both Streisand and O'Neal.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see that movie, though.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's like, it's slapstick. It's one of the funniest movies ever made, as far as I'm concerned. And it's
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's called What's Up, Doc. It's Barbara Streisand, Ryan O'Neal, Madeline Kahn is in it. It's hilarious.
Oh, okay, good. I'll have to rent it.
You'll have to see that. Yeah, it still holds up well. Any stories about working with Cher?
Let me think what happened. I'm trying to think. I didn't work directly with Cher. I worked a lot with Ryan O'Neal.
What was he like?
In a scene. Awesome. Oh, we had a blast. It was a lot of fun. Gosh, I'm trying to think back to that film, because that truly was way back. That was right in the beginning there. I had a little hot streak in New York there. I just remember liking him. Liking him as a person, that's for sure. He was very good in the film.
I'm jogging your memory way back, because another film you did
you
that.
Are.
Another film you did that.
I can't think of an actual story. But.
Well, another film you did that year was The Funeral for Abel Ferrara, and of course Ferrara made Ms. 45, and I love Ms. 45, and of course he did The Funeral with Christopher Walken and yourself.
Yeah. So Christopher Walken was one of my favorite, or still is one of my favorite actors. So that was kind of, I was a bit starstruck because we went to the table read.
Yep.
And that's one of out of all the actors we've talked about, he is the actor that made me starstruck, that made me the most nervous. and I didn't even work directly in a scene with Christopher Walken, but just him being at that table read, I just think he's one of the most phenomenal actors I've ever seen. So he really made me nervous. He was a real nice person, and Abel Ferrara is one of the best. I mean, you want to talk about dark and intense.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, it doesn't get any darker and more intense than Abel Ferrara. And gosh, you're really bringing back memories. I really love Abel. That's another film, though, that was a very, not for the faint of heart to work on, because there was a lot of method actors on that film, too. So you have, actors just playing really rough parts and getting very into the roles, and you just kind of had to, it just was an adventure every night in filming. You didn't know how if people were going to show up sober or how it was rough. I mean, it was like I mentioned, driving into LA is like being in Vietnam. But filming with Abel Ferrara was like being in Vietnam. It was like you have to grow up and really toughen up, because he has a real hardcore set. It's not a set for pampered actors. You get into it, and there's a fight scene, and I just started screaming because it just was too real, and it's he has a very realistic set, and that's why his movies are so good and they touch you so deeply,
I love his movie Ms. 45. Do you ever see that?
Oh, yeah. He's fantastic.
I did 3 tribute interviews on. Unfortunately, Zoe Tamerlan is no longer with us, but her widow's come on my show 3 times to do tribute interviews on about her, and I'm still in touch with him, and I've learned a lot about her. So I feel bad that she went the way she did, but I love Miss 45. It's my favorite Ferrara movie.
Oh my gosh, he's done some amazing ones. What's he done recently? What's going on with Abel?
I don't know. I tried to reach out to him for the 35th anniversary of Ms. 45, but the best I could find was Twitter. But Twitter, I've had luck contacting people on Twitter for interviews, but it's kind of a hit and miss for that 140 character thing, But,
right.
Yeah.
I got to reach out to him, too, because we were actually friends. He's one of the few directors that I talked with after the film. And we talked a lot for several years after that film as friends, and I really liked Abel a lot. Very intense personality type, but that dark, gritty, very realness of him comes out in his films.
Now we'll lighten things up with How High.
How High? Hold on. Oh, How High! Oh my gosh! Yes. Yes, that was Method Man and Red Man.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess I had a lot of fun. I keep saying that was a lot of fun, but it was fun. All that stuff was fun. But there was actually an intensity to that set, though.
Yeah.
I can't describe why. I'm not sure why, but there was. And I remember filming my scene and having a live interview with Howard Stern. He had flown out to Los Angeles to do a live show out here.
Yeah.
And I had just finished my scene. They threw me in a limo. I ran to Howard Stern. I just got there just in time, and I didn't miss the live show. But that was all in the same day. Yeah, How High was great. I played a school teacher, and then I kind of went in and out of his kind of marijuana fog. But yeah, that was a fun film too.
And the last film I want to bring up is The Midnight Hour, where you had a lead in that.
So then, now I'm in Los Angeles, and now you're getting into films where I wasn't a small role in a big film. I was more like a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
So, and I actually really liked being the lead in B movies because you're on set more. You have a bigger role. I don't know. It was just a lot of fun. I always said if I could make a career out of running around shooting people in a bikini, I'll do it. And that's kind of those B films. They're always a little cheesy. Midnight Hour was kind of one of those, cheesy B films. Mm-hmm. And I did a couple of them, 3 or 4 of them in a row. And it is what it is. I don't know if it's a masterpiece, but I tried hard.
Well, you get to be the lead, I mean, that must be put you under a little pressure because you're kind of the central force.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Like I said, you're now a big fish in a small pond. So now you're on set every day. You need to know your lines. People are looking to you to make sure that, if you don't have your lines, no one's going anywhere because you're the central force. You can't go off set and learn them. There's a lot of pressure, and then it's all based on your name. It's being sold around you. The artwork's around you. It's definitely a lot of pressure.
You've done quite a bit of television, too. Do you have anything that stands out as your favorite?
What would stand out as my favorite? I think just my work as a whole. I did a lot of modeling work as a whole and a lot of acting work as a whole. I did a lot of, I wasn't really a one-hit wonder. Was pretty consistent in my work.
Okay.
I'd have to say that, consistency.
Well, here's something, though. I always like to have my guests plug You got a web page?
I don't right now. I'm in my last year of school to be a professional homeopath. So in about 9 months, I'm going to open up a website for my alternative healthcare.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about charities. Do you have a charity that you're involved in?
Not necessarily a charity.
Okay.
Not necessarily a charity, no. But I just would, again, what I'm very passionate about is alternative healthcare, and that if you cannot find answers in traditional medical care, please turn to alternative, because we have a lot of answers to a lot of these so-called autoimmune issues that are going along, and what's happening with people, and the high rates of cancer and autism are inappropriate and disgusting, and it makes me sick. And I'm bound and determined to make a dent in this epidemic of illness that is just taking people's lives out. So please, let alternative physicians help, because I just can't take it. No one talks about, they talk about raising money for cancer, but they don't talk about why it's just, it's becoming, so 2 out of 3 will get cancer and 1 out of 3 will die from it. It's just getting ridiculous.
So do you get is there like a web page for this health center you're talking about?
Not yet. There will be. I'm a born-again Christian, too, so charity is important to me, but also there's a lot of charities that are corrupt, and the money never gets to the people. So I think that's what's kind of burnt me a little bit in the last few years. But please have them check, my Facebook or ambersmith.com in the future, because in about 9 months I am going to put up a website as soon as I have my license.
Okay.
And I'll be a professional homeopath. And it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yes, Amber, and we still think you're gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
Yes, and I'll stay connected with you on Facebook. I don't know. Would you mind if I send you a friend's request?
Oh, sure, of course. It might be full, but I think it's not. So go ahead and do it.
You got a lot of Howard Stern's Whack Packers in there.
I don't know. You have to see.
I'll send you a friend's request, but I'll, as I said, when this comes out, I'll definitely I'll link it to you. Just be patient about it, and if you got any information when your webpage comes out, don't hesitate to send the information to me, because I'll plug it on here.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Before you go, would you mind very much doing a plug for my show?
Oh, sure. Okay, let's do it.
Sure. Shoot.
Hi, this is Amber Smith, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert at Python's Paradise.